There we go. All right. I wasn't sure.
Pull away from the skate. We just bought a new bike because it's now springtime weather for skating. And he's like, my son is like, so don't hurt yourself. Trying to, it's a bigger size. Yeah.
Hey, Tyson.
Yeah.
One of those waters mine? I think it might be the more empty one.
Yep.
Or do I left it back?
Almost drank out of it.
Yeah, I'll put it on this side.
All right, we got 2 people on the live stream. Let's see who they are.
Yeah.
All right. Dang it.
Test. Tyson, you good? Babu. Hi everyone, my name is Christy Wysocki, and welcome to an evening with Community Over Cars, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. Seriously, when we started this 6 months ago, I never imagined being in a room like this with so many neighbors, business owners, and community members gathered together. So tonight, we're going to take you through how we got here, chat with City Council, hear from members of the business district and community leaders, and discuss the vital next steps and how we can all shape Northville's future. But before we get into the details, I want to start with something to remind us of the families, the businesses, the energy, the best of Northville. So I just want to say, this all started with one lawn sign. One sign, and some neighbors wanted one. And soon, more than 400 across Northville were basically from border to border. More than 5,000 people joined the conversation online. And as a social media manager, I'm very proud to say 1.5 million content views of support for the cause. And as we grew that conversation, we were also able to help various groups in the community. The COC mission has always been a positive movement. We didn't start this to fight online battles. We did it to build real-world support. And yes, we support the street closures, but at our core, our mission is growing. And that is to ensure that Northville's public spaces are governed by democratically elected officials, not lawsuits. Before we go any further, I just want to really recognize this all-star team who make this organization possible. I only knew one person on this board, and this is a group of strangers that came together to show up for Northville because they believed in it. Neighbors, parents, business owners, generations came together, and I'm incredibly proud to work with this group. So I just want to give everyone here All right. Woo. How we got here. So let's take a moment and walk through this. And for some of you, it may be a review, but for others, you're going to learn something. Back in 2020, the city of Northville made a tough decision, just like other cities across the country, to temporarily close a portion of Main and Center Street. And something unexpected happened. I like to call it Northville's glow up, while urban planners call it a third place. Not home, not work, but a place where community happens. And people loved it. Northville stood out amongst other Metro Detroit cities. And in a community survey, the feedback was clear. Respondents strongly supported the district. So in 2023, the city council adjusted from year-round closures to seasonal closures to balance the needs of businesses, residents, and visitors. Around that time, a group formed called Let's Open Northville and hired Barnum to file a lawsuit against the city challenging these closures. This past July, a judge ruled in their favor based on a language in an 1840 plat. Does anyone want to tell me when the Model T was on? Anyone? Anyone? 1908. The ruling ordered that the city must reopen Main and Center streets. And for many residents and businesses, this was a major shift because a program that had been shaped by the community was being dictated by litigation. And the challenges didn't stop there. Shortly after the ruling, LON filed an emergency motion for contempt, arguing that certain elements of the downtown still violated this court order. And the judge ordered the removal of all on-street dining. On-street dining had been permitted since at least 2011, and for many, it was a major part of our city. So losing the space was just not symbolic, it had real consequences for the businesses and character of the downtown. At this point, City Council made the decision to appeal the ruling, and that appeal is still in process today because of delays related to court transcripts that is slowing down the process more than anyone had hoped. And most importantly, the judge's order does not have an end date. So unless something changes, this will continue this circle. Earlier this year, City Council announced some strategic priorities, and the priority to explore a legislative solution that clarifies the authority cities have over their own streets was announced. In simple terms, ensuring that communities can make decisions about their right-of-ways through their elected officials. But even as these conversations are happening, the legal challenges continue, and many of you know the latest news where Let's Open Northville sent another letter to the city raising concerns about the Main Street closures on the weekends and the structural improvements on Main. Whew. So that brings us to the core issue we're facing today. Local streets, local decisions. That's what really this conversation is about tonight, because right now, Northville is being determined not through the elected officials, but going through the courts. So at this point, I would love to invite Board Member Dan Farrell, and he's going to dive in with the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was quite the start. All right, so like Christy said, my name is Dan Farrell. I'm a board member of Community River Cars and Northville resident. I have the privilege today of leading a conversation with Mayor Pro Tem John Carter and Councilman Andrew Krenz. They were recently re-elected to their second term on council and have been incredible assets for the community. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Before we hop in for some questions, just a quick story about these two. I was at their re-election campaign launch last year at the Great White Buffalo, and it was a light environment. There was nobody registered to run against them. But each of them stood up and insisted and said, hey, wait, no, I have all these important things that I'm going to do during my next campaign, and went through how they're going to drive water infrastructure improvements and Ford Field improvements. These are just great people, and we're really lucky to have them leading your city. With that, hopping right in, Andrew, how's Community River Cars helped the city so far?
All right, we on? Thanks for the kind words, by the way. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read just a couple notes I've gathered on whatever we have here. So how you help Community River Cars goes back to about 4 or 5 years, back in 2020 as that timeline was shown. And I think there's a misunderstanding across the broader community that due to the amount of energy in council chambers and online, that the ideas that John and I noticed on council were supporting were not supported by the majority. So there was this confusion that volume of voices was the same thing as volume of people, and that just simply was not the case. So, but we couldn't point to anything. on that. We had friends everywhere. John takes this seriously. I take this seriously. Others take this seriously. Neighbors, businesses, everybody. They said that they really are in support, but they just don't have time because a lot of people in this room are raising kids. They have families. And quite frankly, rare is the person who comes to council on a Monday night and pounds the podium and says, I'm fine with this. So you don't get a whole lot of people there. So I always knew that it wasn't representative of what the community was, but there was no counterpoint. And because there was no counterpoint, you started to see that get into the water table of local media. There were stories that were relatively negative that I was struggling with. So then you guys came along. And this was really important. So this group has restored, all of you, by the way, could be anywhere but here tonight. But you're here, you all care, and John and I care. So it's absolutely wonderful to see. I was always hoping we'd see the day, but not under these circumstances, but that's okay, we'll get to it. So this group has restored, in no uncertain terms, what this community stands for with respect to families, safety, third places, offering something that's extraordinarily unique, where I'll just give a brief example. I have a buddy who's a pilot for Delta, flies international, brings his friend in from Seattle and says he's never seen anything like it. And you can just build those anecdotal stories over and over and over again. And now that you have this group, and with the work that all those people put up there, you see the counterpoint and you see the positivity, and you see that the stories that are being told locally and regionally are changing and they're more positive. But like we said here, we still have a lot more to do.
Thank you, Andrew. And well, I wanted to say, hey, look at all that Community of Cars has done. It's really what the community has done, as Andrew said. John, going to you. Does the community of Northville support street closures? And I mean, let's talk about some data.
I like how Andrew gets, how has everyone in this room helped? And I get, show me the data. Yeah, we're figuring out who Dan likes. So one thing I would note is from the beginning, we said we needed broad public support in any decision we made. That was the start. And as Councilmember Krenz referenced earlier, we love data. So if anybody knows Andrew and I, and anyone was at our kickoff event and saw my wife give us the shut it down moment, we will love to dive into the details, but I'm gonna actually only focus on a couple key points. We had information that was broken down looking at Main Street and Center, seasonal, weekend. We also had information on City of Northville residents, Township residents, Novi residents, and surrounding area. And if anyone's curious, we also were able to look at number of votes or number of polling responses from identical IP addresses to make sure we didn't have redundant answers kind of pushing the numbers, okay? We had all that detail. I am not gonna make all of you sit here while I read through all of that data. But the 3 points I'll point out is, one, you saw it earlier, 74% of people supported the street closures. And that is on Main and or Center. Additionally, that number became consistent whether you looked at the township, whether you looked at Novi, and whether you looked at the surrounding area. In fact, it was actually higher in the city. The other point I'll bring up is on Main Street, 72% of business owners supported the closures on Main Street, and 66% of business owners supported the closures along Center. Now, a response to that would be, okay, but that's a few years ago. So what has happened since? How do you know? And so I will point out what I think is a very important fact. In 2021, you had 3 people run. You had 2 members of city council run for city council and 1 mayor who all were publicly on record for supporting the seasonal closures. In 2023, you had again 3 people run. You had a mayor who was on record for supporting the seasonal closures, and then you had 1 of 2 of the city council members being on record for supporting. And then in 2025, thank you, by the way, you had, again, a mayor and 2 council people, all 3 on record. That is 8 out of 9 individuals who were publicly and supportive that won their seats on city council. Your votes matter. That perspective has to carry forward as we make decisions. Oh, do you have a, I thought he was trying to take the mic. We need this at city council. The other thing I would add is those numbers are all about seasonal closures. When we start to talk about dining in the streets and leveraging parking spaces for dining, when we start talking about weekend closures, when we start talking about repairing our roads, which Any of you who have walked recently down Main Street can see that we need to do repairs to Main Street. There are opportunities for us to invest in Town Square to make that an incredible place to bring people together. Those are decisions that local leaders need to be able to make and investments that cities need to be able to make to be successful. And I can tell you personally, I don't have data on that one, but it's a small town and you guys are very outspoken. There is overwhelming support for those three items.
Yeah, thank you, John. And just so you know, those were the two easy questions, so they do get harder here.
I got my data ready here too.
Yeah, so one more piece of data. So the city council recently voted 5-0 in support of the Main Street closures for the upcoming special events on the weekends over the summer, as well as the Main Street downtown renovations. What's the status of those at this point?
So I'll take this one. On February 2nd, we had a special event request for called Summer in the Ville. As was noted, I'm going to be a little obnoxious. So this came from the DDA, but it was in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, with Parks and Rec, with the Art House, and a number of community stakeholders. And I'm just going to list out the events that are included in this special event. Summer in the Ville weekly summer concert series. Tunes on Tuesday. Dancing in the Ville on Wednesday. Thursday jazz series. Friday acoustic band series. Saturday big band series. Sunday weekend wellness days. Derby Days Ladies Night Out. The Flower Sale. The Art Market. The Victorian Festival. Skeletons Alive and the Skeletons Alive launch party. Witches Night Out. Streets of Treats. I'm not done yet. Hometown Holiday and the Lighted Parade. We are incredibly lucky to live in such an engaged community, and it is incredible how much effort people put into making that a success. As part of that approval, it also included a closure for weekends, so starting Friday at 3 o'clock, reopening Monday at 7 a.m., and that is tied to DPW hours. So anyone who's asking on the times, that is intentional and strategic to keep the city's costs at a reasonable level because you don't want to have to pay a weekend and overtime. It makes it more efficient. We approved that from May through October with flexibility to the city. So I will note if there is a storm coming in October, we have the ability to open it up and adjust. If construction ends up impacting things, we have the ability to adjust there as well. And as Dan noted, that vote was not 3-2, it was not 4-1. That was a unanimous vote of support. Additionally, we approved, as I referenced earlier, renovations to Main Street as well as updates to Town Square itself. The thing I will point out there is we believe, and I'm sure many of you or all of you saw the city statement, we strongly believe that not only are these consistent with what municipalities are doing all over the state, but this is consistent with the court order that we received. And so with that in mind, we are 100% moving forward. We're moving forward with the weekend closures. We're moving forward with all of the events that I just listed off. And we're moving forward with the updates to Main Street and Town Square, unless we end up having a court or Let's Open Northville achieve a court's decision that causes us to be forced to change that path.
Great to hear. Thank you, John. Andrew, has the city tried to compromise for Let's Open Northville?
All right. Thank you for that question. So here's my softball then, John. As I get it. You got the data, I got this one. So
This isn't controversial.
no controversy here. So if you allow me, I'm going to read some notes because it's long and I want to be very specific about it. And I want to be as fair about this as I possibly can. So any of you have seen that, let's say, one of the complaints lobbied against council and city administration is that we would not compromise. Now, many of these same people I've offered the opportunity to sit and have coffee with and have been rejected. So no better time than now, I suppose, than to tell the story of what compromise looks like. So I have a timeline here, so just afford me the opportunity to sit through it. So compromise requires two bodies, two entities. The first one is sitting in front of you. John and I are publicly elected officials. We are in the public space. We take all good, all the bad, but you know exactly who we are. We run for election based on our ideas and where we want to go with the city. And if you want to go in a different way, then I can spend a lot more time with my family and doing other things. And I tip my hat to anybody else who has those ideas. Now, as you saw, John and I were unopposed this year, as John had noted too. The other entity is obviously Let's Open Northville. It's a 501c4. So what that means in basic terms is a 501c4 does not have to disclose their membership, their board, their funding, or their goals. In theory, a 501c4 could be entirely made up of people who are not in the interest of the community they claim to be. I am not saying that's the case, but that's a possibility. That would be one motivation of hiding behind the 501c4. So those are the two entities. One is in the public sphere. I'm here right now defending what I believe to 150 of my closest friends. I encourage the other group to do that as well at some time. So did we negotiate? So that's setting the table on who the parties were. So as you saw probably online for quite some time, and unfortunately as all of our kids saw online, as my daughter saw online, John's daughter saw online, there was repeated comments about we are not going to negotiate. Now that's not legal, but you do see people who have access to the website who says absolutely do not negotiate. That's not something I would say is my highest bar here, but that's where we started. That group also was not incorporated as a formal entity or a 501c4 until I believe September of 2023. So at that point, there was no specific entity that you could negotiate with, if we were even going to negotiate. And by the way, in 2023 was also an election. And John already discussed the results of that, and we still have the makeup of a city council that supports the street closures, and we're here today. So once the 501c4 was created, I could not tell you who the entity is that I would actually negotiate with. There are members of that organization I would reach out to casually and say, we could talk, but that was roundly rejected. So for me, and I take this role seriously because like John, we both love the city, we love our neighbors, and we want the best for this. My obligation is only to negotiate in the public sphere for your benefit and reflect your goals to people who are the same and likewise. I will, and I'm sure John would say this too, I will never negotiate with a group that will not come forward, state their funding, and state their goals. I will simply not do that. In September of 24, we did try to put this on the ballot, although there's some novelty to what was involved with that we don't have to discuss here, but ultimately it was rejected by the Secretary of State. Based on the comments that John had and I had, the data I've collected over 3 years with very high confidence and reliability, it would have passed overwhelmingly. But it didn't, Secretary of State didn't allow it. That's unfortunate. In April of 25, the city held its pre-trial hearing before the court case. So we weren't in the room, but we do get some information, and what I can share is completely open and public record. But the city did offer it as part of negotiation if Let's Open Northville would accept weekend closures, and they rejected it. So the negotiation, the offer of compromise, just to test the water, I'm not saying it would have been accepted because it would have had to come to council for a vote, but they rejected it before we even had the chance. So again, we're getting to the narrative on who's doing the negotiation and who's participating in the public sphere to the benefit of the people. In June of 25, obviously we know that the court ruled in favor of what was interpreted to be the plat law. We accepted that, and within days, we removed the bollards. I think we were a day early. But then within a week, by the way, while I was on vacation for my birthday in Colorado, getting away for a little bit, the injunction order came in that they were going to look to cease operations and have an injunction on restaurants in the street. Dining in the street. And in the prior study showed that has 91% support in this community. We can't even get 91% of people to say the sky's blue, but that's what we do. This is a little long down, and I think this is important. So what I want to read to you what the ramifications were to City Council. This is public record information. The order literally seeks remedies for punitive damages, court fees, and jail time for city officials over the use of 10 spaces for street dining. and it goes on. If that's negotiation, that's unlike any negotiation or compromise activity I've ever seen. So that was that event. And then I'm almost to the end here. So after that, there was, as you all imagine, there was massive public backlash, extraordinary backlash to the point where I'm trying to hike in Colorado and I'm getting text when I don't have $0. Went over great, highly recommend.
I just keep typing.
Yeah, we just what's going on. So there's 2 motions, they were rejected, 4-1 and 5-0. So again, not 3-2, it was 4-1 and 5-0. Why? Because what was offered to the city was arbitrary and might have been arbitrage to save face. Now that's my own interpretation, I'm not speaking for them. But in the end, we can't compromise on things like that. And the reason why is the moment we would have agreed to that, that would have been the rule into perpetuity. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, you would have been stuck with 8 parking spaces for 11 weekends, not 10, not 6, not 4. There was absolutely no reason. It was the appearance of compromise to put us into a bad spot. And I absolutely will not be blackmailed by that. And I'm sure I'm speaking for John and others too, is we have an obligation not only to serve you, but also future residents of the city and future councils. So just to wrap up, and I'm sorry this went long, but this is a long question. All right. So the remedy for this, so what's the remedy? It's run for election. So if we do end up getting into an environment where we have the ability to have local government rule local roads, then run for election and may the best ideas win. I tip my hat. If somebody comes along with better ideas, I step aside. That's how the democratic process works. So just to put a bow on it, I did not see good faith in negotiation. There was no public person, no stated charter, no declaration of funding, no board members. They rejected offers and only offered something that was arbitrary into perpetuity after they got handed the cookie jar. And John's got another good point to make.
I'm gonna add one more. So one thing that Andrew mentioned that I think is very important is we do always need to be cognizant of the decisions we're making, that we should not be tying the hands of a future council. I think we have to be committed to that, recognize our role in this period of time, and that there are future generations that will make future decisions and they need the ability to govern as well. The other thing, the other thing I will point out, and I'm not going to name names, it's a small town, we don't need to do that. But in cross-examination, the founder of Let's Open Northville, after that discussion had taken place, was asked, would you support weekend closures? And the response was yes. Obviously, that is not the case anymore.
Thank you. I mean, the transparency is right there. Andrew did take some of your time, John. But were people previously coming to Northville because of the streets being closed, and now they're going elsewhere?
Sorry, I'm looking for my data here. Give me 2 seconds. So the question again, if you don't mind repeating.
Were people coming to Northville because the streets were closed and are now going elsewhere?
So on this one, I've got a couple different angles I'm going to take with it. And the first is it's hard to know, like we talk about macroeconomic trends, national trends, and our local decisions and how those are impacting businesses. And so knowing exactly whether the decisions we make result in a fantastic new location moving in downtown, we don't know that, in fairness. We don't know exactly. But I can tell you a couple things about what was happening in Northville, what is happening in Northville, what we want to maintain. One is over the last 5 years, we have seen an unprecedented number of businesses looking to move into downtown Northville, looking to establish operations. The DDA has a backlog of organizations that want to be based within our city. Now, you have to find the right location, the right business at the right time. So this is a complicated process, but we are in a fantastic position. And the reality is Northville is a community that people want to be in. They want to be a part of. So that's part one. The second part that I will answer is when we think about impact on the businesses. I know one of the things we had talked about is how do we see this potentially impacting businesses if we've seen an uptick of people coming downtown and we lose the weekend closures or the outdoor dining. One thing that I will know is when you start doing what Andrew and I are doing, there's a change that takes place. They're no longer businesses. It's when I think about, instead of it being a retail operation, a restaurant, a professional services, what ends up happening is these become your friends. You get to know them, you care about them, and you develop those relationships. And what I can tell you is that people that I care about so much are investing their livelihood in this town. They are going all in on Northville. And I've had 2 restaurant owners tell me that they could see approximately a 30% decline in revenue if they lose the outdoor dining within the street as well as the weekend closures. That's devastating. That's just simply a pain that it causes me to get very frustrated. I know I got a little rattled when Dan first asked the question because this is one that I will openly admit hits home because, again, it's people that we care about. The other thing that I will share is we get data from SEMCOG. And so SEMCOG will provide us information based on cell phones that shows, and we can't see your numbers and who's and where, so don't worry about that. But it does show us what type of foot traffic we are seeing throughout Northville and when. And what we have noticed is there are significant upticks in foot traffic during the periods of weekend closures over when the streets are open. We see that consistently, whether it's in the summer, whether it's in the spring, the fall, the entire period we're discussing, it has a noticeable impact. That impacts retail as well. And so we have to recognize that this has a significant impact when you start talking about a significant decrease in foot traffic, a significant decrease in number of tables, in number of patrons to go to restaurants. There are organizations, entities in our downtown that will be at risk if we are not able to prevent this change from happening.
Excellent. I just want to add 1 or 2 small things to build on that. So I can't speak to where people were going, but I can look at the shelves on the wall and tell you what I think here. So there was a claim that, and it'll be on the public record in court, it's already in the public record, and the transcript comes out, that since our policies were initiated, that 21 businesses went out, concluded operations for any and all reasons. So that would be from 2021 to late last year, so 5 years, or 2020 to that, so it's a 5-year time frame. I will pick at it a little bit and say 3 of the businesses explicitly listed in the court document went out of business in 2017, 19, and 16, but they were ultimately right that it was 21 businesses that went under. What's key here is context. If you look at 2015 to 2019, the same time frame, in the same area, 39 businesses went under for any and all reasons. That's a 36% reduction in business closures per year from what we were installing. And then one last thing, and I think our retailers might be better to speak to this, is the reason why I think I know this was working is walking traffic is high propensity shopping traffic. Every retail owner in this room is going to tell you that exactly. So how do you know that? If those who offered me the information, you can look at credit card receipts for 4816767 and 68. Sorry, I can't. I love it. I have to tell my daughter that, so I think I'm here. So if you pull those out, the receipts for the all other zip codes went up 40% when the street closures were. And that's during the week and in the weekends. So yes, it did work because you pulled higher propensity walking people in to shop at the retailer. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Andrew. You can keep the mic though. So moving into the main issue here, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the city regains its ability to close the streets. And so let's start with the appeal. Can you give us an update?
All right, yeah. So this one I'll be a little more brief on. So the appeal. Has anybody heard about it? All right. So when this came before City Council, there was and I keep lists like John. I love data. I'm ruled by data to a fault. But there was, I think, 217 unique correspondences, either through in-person, through email, or stopping me on the street. 217 is what I got. unique people, and I even went and verified that they're real humans online, and I actually know a lot of these people. 91% support for the appeal. This is a no-brainer. This is what this community wants. But let me just first tell you what the appeal is. It's not to close the streets. It's to give us the opportunity to own the right-of-way of the roads again. That's what the appeal is. So now it's interesting there. So it's a two-step process. It's like the two keys on the nuclear submarine. So it's first to get the right-of-way, but then your council, whatever the distribution of the council is at the time, would then use all the available data and then create a future strategy, which can be anywhere from full open to whatever. So what we're talking about right now is the ability to return the right of way, or let's say local roads to local leaders, I think was the catchphrase there.
Local streets, local decisions.
There it is, thank you. So overwhelming support, that is obvious. So are appeals unusual going from a circuit to an appeals court? No, it happens all the time. Appeals court existed the day after the circuit court started. So this happens all the time. There's absolutely nothing extraordinary about taking a case to appeal. There's different measures for overturn and ruling in the appeals court versus circuit court. So you're not necessarily challenging the judge's ruling. You're looking at other parts of the case. We think that we have 4 different pillars that we can go after in the case. I am absolutely not going to talk about any of those here as part of the strategy of the city and the legal staff. There will be additional attorneys that are more used to arguing in front of an appellate court because they make different arguments. So you're going to see probably different representation. With respect to burning city assets for the continuation of the court, John knows a little better than me, so he can clean me up on this. But we have a municipal insurance policy. It's called MMRNA. Stop me when I go wrong, John. And we've generally reached our limit on of what our cap is that we would spend. So at this point, the costs are distributed across the MMRNA. So that's all your municipalities in the state. So why is that important? We have received a lot of interest from municipalities around the state who have seen what's going on here, and they're terrified. And so you got to walk away here with one thing. This is not a Northville fight. This is a state of Michigan fight. So what you're going to start to see is there's going to be a lot more interest coming in. So when we get to just what's next on the appeal, we're still waiting on the transcript. It is what it is. There was a delay. I think we're in the middle of the next 30-day delay, and then I think it can go to the end of April. So the wheels of justice will move slowly here. Once we have the transcript, then we can file. And once we file, other interested parties can then file amicus briefs in support. From what we've heard, there will be a lot of those. Because like I said, this is a state level issue. So you're going to see things potentially from bodies that are governing like bodies like SEMCOG, Conference Western Wayne, Michigan Municipal League, and other municipalities. John probably has a better take on that. So we're going to get all those, and we're going to go into the appeals process. I don't know when that's scheduled, and it's not going to be short. It's going to take time. So that's where we are at the moment. I don't know, John, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually just kind of keep going on the legislative process, if that's okay.
Let me just, I'll introduce it, just to make sure everybody's aware. So the city recently approved a strategic priority to have a legislative solution to ensure local government control of public right-of-ways. That doesn't mean a lot to most people. Maybe you can tell people what that means.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So as Councilmember Krenz was saying, the first thing I will note is we are going to continue to defend the city on the appeal. That is not changing. We are continuing that path. Appeals process can take 18 to 24 months, so they are a long process. The other thing that I will highlight is the likelihood of an appeal being successful in Broad is typically a little less than 20%. Now, don't lose hope because that's in aggregate, and we do think we have a very strong case for appeal. That said, we need to look at all options on the table. And as was referenced earlier, we have had a surprising number of entities, and I'll say entities in terms of municipalities, cities, townships, at the state level, reaching out. And consistently, the thing we hear is you cannot lose this. This has the potential to then impact the plans we have, the way we're approaching, because we're worried a similar lawsuit could get filed in our community, and then how do we respond and navigate that? with this situation in place. So what is that next step? So that's where we start looking at what does a legislative approach look like? How do we address a law that has been interpreted, in my opinion, incorrectly, but has been interpreted in this manner? So how do we address that law? The first thing that I will note is this cannot be a partisan issue. This is not red, it is not blue. We need to bring people together from both sides to resolve this. The other thing is we need broad appeal within Lansing. And so that is where the effort of getting a lobbyist, bringing them in to help make sure that our voice, our perspective here is heard in Lansing, and that we're able to connect to those other communities so that we can tell that story that isn't just a, hey, Northville has a frustration over its street, but is a, this has significant implications for the state of Michigan and for creating placemaking and how cities are managed, and now how even we're repairing roads across our state. So that is that next step. Now, the cost itself is, and again, we believe in transparency. On average, if we kick this off in the spring and it runs through the summer, it's usually about a $30,000 cost. Our goal, and we'll get into this from a fundraising perspective in a bit, but our goal is to have as little as possible, ideally $0 come from taxpayer funds. We want to work very hard to make sure that this is a community-led initiative and that we are trying to achieve this without making the taxpayers pay that on top. But it's a critical step to make sure that we are able to ultimately position the city for success for the long term.
So Andrew,
Yeah,
the next question is, hey.
Can I add one?
Go for it.
I'm just gonna, so timing wise. Yeah. So timing wise, yeah, I'm not giving it back either. So timing wise, right now what we're doing is developing language. And we're gonna be bouncing that language against other entities that are interested, like we've already talked about, to develop the most robust language we can to get this through the first time. We're also right now developing and sending out RFIs to lobbyists. And is it unusual for any municipality to have a lobbyist or hire a lobbyist? Not at all. It happens all the time. There's absolutely nothing extraordinary about it. It's just something we haven't done before. So we're working on the RFI to have a lobbyist in place. So time-wise, when do we want to have that? Early April. And I think that's going to touch on something Dan's going to say here. Once we have that in place, once we have the lobbyists and the language in place, then we're going to start working the Lansing scene. And as John said, it's very partisan red-blue. I think there's a lot in here for both sides, and we need to be as broad in our appeal as possible to get this through. Because we know that, as John said and I said, this is a state-level issue that will have a significant impact on our third places, our ability to manage roads at any level. So I think I just wanted to add that that's what the timing looks like. So we're moving on it, but we can't go forever because we want to get into the next legislative cycle. So the lobbying occurs spring, summer, and then you start to really get into the busy cycle in fall, and we want to go quick, as quick as we can. So I just want to get that.
No, all good. So just on a related topic, is there anything else you'd like the community to hear?
Since I'm holding the mic, I'll start. So 5 years ago, I knew everybody in this room existed. It's just, I didn't know who you were yet. And if I look at some of the events that have been held, like some of the walks and some of the fundraising events and everything else, I actually ran a 5K for the first time in my life in support of some of this stuff. It was awful. It was the absolute worst. I'll do it again this year. But what really bothered me, because I think we're all here tonight because we all love this city with a passion. But what I was seeing in the media was what was getting into the water table was a lot of vitriol and a lot of negativity, and there was no counterpoint to that. That's gone now. And it's because of the people in this room. Now, in terms of what's next, what we're talking about in our two-prong approach, or three-prong is first, let's hope we can get weekend closures. And when you do, support every single business in town to the best of your ability. Every single one. There's going to be no boycotts, none of that. Support them all and let them all know how wonderful this is and how positive. Share it, drag your friends down. That's number one. The second part of it is what we're talking about on legislation and also the appeal. It's going to take time. So there's a lot that's going to happen in the very short term, and then it's probably going to go dark for a while. Don't lose the sense of community and energy that you have in support of this. Be a true believer in it, because it's gonna fire back up at some point. So we'll probably go through a stretch where it looks like not a lot is going on, but John and I and others are gonna be pushing and pushing and pushing, but we're pushing on something that we don't control. The timing is gonna be what the timing is. So don't lose hope. I think, don't say I've already invested 2 years in this and it's going nowhere. Absolutely don't believe in the sunk time fallacy. Keep going with it, because we got two approaches. We're pretty confident on both, but we just don't know. So stay with it. As you get together, it's going to look like not a lot's going on. Ask us, ask any of these people, and we'll have updates, but it probably won't be as prolific for a little while, but know that we're pushing. And that's it. And thanks again for hosting us. It's absolutely great to be here.
Thank you, Andrew. John?
I still have time left?
No.
So I'm gonna get myself in trouble right off the bat. I'm gonna start by thanking Chrissy Krenz, because it's actually her birthday today. And, I know she's exactly where she wants to be. Beyond that, I also wanted to, I guess, to start, just say thank you to all of you, to this organization for bringing people together in a positive manner. I think it's very important that we maintain a positive attitude throughout. We focus on community and bringing people together. That is the beginning. It's what this all became from originally. And if we lose that intent, then we've already lost. I'll also point out that it is 70 degrees and sunny, and all of you are hanging out in a community center. That doesn't happen everywhere. We are blessed to be in an incredibly engaged community. And so sometimes we joke about the number of people that come in and how long citizen comments last to council. It's fantastic. We are so lucky to have people that care this much about our town and are willing to fight for it, bring their ideas forward, and continue to work hard. And so I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for being out here today. The second item that I wanted to raise was, when this started, I made the comment that, and this was probably 3-4 years ago, I made the comment that we will initiate this effort. We're going to watch what happens. We're going to talk to our residents. We're going to talk to our businesses. We're going to learn what's working. We're going to learn what's not working, and we're going to pivot accordingly. That's what this is all about. One thing you aren't hearing is us coming up and making some pitch about permanent, about seasonal, about weekend, and arguing the nuances between. That is not. This is about local decisions. It's about local officials, city leaders being able to push and drive a direction and adjust to trends as they come. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so we have to be able to work with our residents, work with our businesses, work with our community organizations, and we need to be able to think about what is the best way to position them for success. What investments can we make in downtown that continue to bring people in? We talk often, you saw the quote earlier, that this is a town that brings 300,000 people, consider it its downtown, and it brings them here. We need to create and foster that environment. And because of that, that is why this is such an important discussion and something we all need to keep working for. So thank you all for continuing that effort.
Let's have a big round of applause for John and Andrew. So, as you just heard, there's a lot going on, and I just want to crystallize a little of what you heard, because some of it might have been new, and to me, it's all very important. So if we go to the next one. So there are two paths forward. The city supports street closures, and we support the city in its desire to control the streets. With these two clear paths forward, as a community, we can empower the city with the resources that they need to be successful in regaining control of the city streets. These aren't fun ideas, but they're going to be effective. The first path forward is on the appeal. We've talked to several legal experts who feel the judge did not correctly apply the legal standard in this case. That being said, when you file an appeal, you can't just introduce new information. You don't get a redo on your trial. However, there is something called an amicus brief that can be filed by an organization that is not party to the case, like Community Over Cars. In this brief, we can share arguments, research, or policy that the city cannot introduce on its own. It can introduce the correct legal standards, and it can explain the implications of the judge's ruling, and that the community of Northville wants to have control of its city streets. We'd hire our own counsel to do this and have a person identified. And as we saw during the trial, it's very important to have a strong attorney representing you. This can make a difference in the appeal. Let's shift to the city's new strategic priority on the legislative solution on the issue. The city and the community of our cars believe that city should have control of its streets. And the city wants to create a law that clarifies that explicitly. Passing a law is complicated. Language needs to be drafted to clarify the local government control of the city streets. Then a lobbyist needs to work with members of the state legislature to get the bill introduced and ultimately passed. Once passed, the city can then move to vacate the judge's opinion due to a change in the case, the new law. Based on our conversations with experts, this is a viable option. It's nonpartisan, as John said, and we believe we can gather the support needed in the legislature for approval. The language is currently being drafted and lobbyists have been identified. In order to be persuasive, this amicus brief and lobbyists need to be armed with exhibits and data. There shouldn't be any debate over the economic, safety, or community sentiment regarding the street closures. We need to get experts to do the work, capturing the data, supporting these opinions, both positions. We have two effective paths forward here to drive local streets and local decisions. Next one. So why we're here tonight. We have a goal to raise $50,000 by April 1st to fund local streets and local decisions. It's important that this funding comes from the community for two reasons. One, it demonstrates how important it is to us to have a pedestrian district downtown. Two, the city doesn't have a budget for this level of support. We can give the city the firepower it needs to win and create a pedestrian district downtown. There are two ways to donate and both are tax deductible. I'll start with a direct donation to the city. The city has already raised more than half the money that they need to fund the lobbyists. They're looking for a handful of donors to get them across the finish line with four-figure donations directly to the city. It's a big ask, but you'll have a huge impact. If that's you, please see John or Andrew so that they can note your pledge and answer any questions that you have. And Community River Cars has created an online fundraiser. You have a QR code on that postcard that was handed out. So if you don't have a postcard, get it from Danny. Or feel free to take a picture right there and you can use the QR code. This is the moment that we've been waiting for to make a difference in creating a downtown pedestrian district. Thank you, and I'll pass it over to Alyssa.
All right, are we awake? Everybody with us? Yeah. All right, so we are going to invite some of our local business owners to come up, and we're going to have a conversation and give a voice to Paul, Derek, and Colleen. Come up and join me. All right, come on, anyway. Let me introduce myself. My name is Alyssa Tomatos. I'm a proud Northville resident, born and raised. Did, growing up here, want to get out for a little while, which I did. Went to the big city. Hit an age where I was like, oh, it's so cute. This is where I want to raise the kids. This is where we want to raise the kids. My husband coaches for Northville Rec, a couple sports. We're very involved and engaged. At Halloween, we have a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. You guys may have seen him. That was not approved by me initially, but I paved. I conceded eventually. But we're here tonight because we love this community. And I love what Christy said about how we were strangers. I'm on the board. I didn't know any of these people. But what happened was, as Andrew said, I was going about my business. We've got two little kids, working, all the sports, the schedules, and I had no concerns about our city council's ruling being overturned until it happened. And when it happened, everybody's phone just started blowing up. What is going on here? Because the narrative of all the people that, I live on Dunlap, all the people around me was, we could not be happier. We could not be happier. There was no more traffic. So I was genuinely very confused. And then something happened where it was such a example of how one person having a voice can be a catalyst for so much change and connection, because Christy decided, and Lori decided to make a sign. She made a sign, that's it. She made a sign and I saw the sign and I was like, that is what we need. We need more of that. How do I get involved? Where do I donate? Who do I talk to? Because I wanted everybody to have a voice and change the narrative to what I felt like aligned more with my reality and reality of so many of my neighbors. So the purpose of this panel is to do what Christine started for us, is to give a voice. So we've invited some of our friends up here, Colleen, Derek, not Derek, Paul, and Derek. And we would love to start a conversation and hear your perspective about how this has affected you. And we'll just start with some quick introductions about who you are, the business or role that you play in the community, and why you chose Northville.
All right, so I'm Colleen Kelly, and I am one of the co-founders of Gather Northville. And I'm also a realtor, and I work in digital marketing too. I guess I'll start first with why I came to Northville. I came to Northville because it has the best schools in the state. I was newly divorced, and I wanted my kids to have a great place to live. The schools are amazing. They did so great in school, and then I was like, okay, how do I meet people? What am I supposed to do? And like, okay, you just have to go out and start somewhere. And I happened to start at North Center Brewing because breweries are always very friendly. And it was like, just go have one beer and then you can leave and it'll be fine. And I met all kinds of wonderful people, and they had a shuffleboard table there. And I played shuffleboard, and I happened to destroy my opponent, who is this new guy named Nick. In any case, it went from there. Nick started a shuffleboard league. And there were people that came to the shuffleboard league that didn't even play shuffleboard. They just wanted to hang out and have fun and talk to people. And this was sort of like how adults make friends, right? Because when you move to a new city, how else are you gonna do that? And that was really how Gather Northville was born, was Nick just continued to make the events into something bigger and bigger. And we realized, particularly after COVID, that people were hungry for this. They realized, like, we spent all that time indoors without knowing anyone. And when we finally came out again, we wanted a place to belong. We wanted a sense of community. I would even say in general, I also work many times remotely, you just don't meet people. You're so insulated and you're on your own. The ability to be a part of a community where people say hello and where you can sit down at the bar at table 5 and talk to anyone who's sitting next to you, and there's this whole community right there, that matters. And so at Gather Northville, we really believe in the connection that's created in this community. And we actually also found it as a counterpoint to Let's Open Northville, because we figured there's something beyond this. There's room for just creating connections in the community between people, between businesses, and make Northville a destination. Because on a sunny day when it's 70 degrees and the streets are closed to cars, everyone comes to Northville. And that matters, and you can see the connections. Every time you go out, you meet new people. Some of the healing, I think, that can happen in the United States is when you have communities that care about each other and that talk to each other again. And we did that in Northville sort of accidentally with this pedestrian zone, whether it's the weekend or whether it's broader than that. That is healing communities and creating connections, and it matters.
So my name is Paul Gabriel. I'm one of the owners of Brown Dog. So my husband and I, we live in Novi. We're just a few minutes away, but we came to Northville actually 11 years ago. We opened right next door to where we are right now. We came to Northville because we saw this great community, this great town, and ultimately we just said, yeah, we want to open a business there, and it's been great. All right.
Hey guys, my name is Eric Blair. I own the Northville Gallery here on Main Street, right across the street from these guys. I also live in Cabbagetown. I've lived there 10 years and bought the gallery 6 years ago, 2 months before COVID hit. Managed just fine. Stuck inside looking at empty walls and finding stuff to frame. So we ended up doing great with that big silver lining with the pedestrian zone. Prior to that, I lived in Novi. I have two 26-year-old twin girls. They went to Novi High School. We just consider Northville downtown Novi. And I guess that's kind of what the whole notion that we got 5,000 people in Northville Nation, and that's it. Our businesses don't know borders of cities and stuff. This is a regional destination. I might be getting ahead of myself, but I've said this before. There's a huge movement in America, in North America, about the demollification of America. People want walkable, vibrant downtowns like this. This was ahead of its time, and thank you guys for the leadership and vision of something like this. For the gallery, we're kind of a destination place for custom framing, so people park out back, bring it in, and away they go. But we have a lot of walk-in traffic. We have 30 local artists, including Teresa up the road back here, does watercolors. We support 30 local artists. People walk in, and when we do have street closures, and we know there's some consistency, and we stay open later, people walk in, constant traffic on Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings, Sunday afternoons, when we know what consistency. And I think that's the final thing I just want to say. That uncertainty, that all this goes back and forth, and if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, investor, you don't know. We can't plan. And so this is frustrating as a business owner to not have that certainty, and we're legislating, or we're judges deciding this, that, yeah, it's been rather frustrating. I was hoping it would have been resolved by now, and I think a lot of small business owners probably think the same way. Let's just hopefully get through this, keep supporting this group financially and whatever way we can, and hopefully we can get a result.
Thank you. Let me go to you. If you could just share with us how the street closures affected Brown Dog and the on-street dining and the atmosphere and the impact that it had to your business.
So anytime the streets are closed, we generally do well. I mean, before COVID, we would always joke that, you know, if they could just close the streets all the time, it would be great. Because as it was mentioned before, foot traffic drives revenue. So, I mean, if you were here for Skeletons Are Alive launch, that first day, it was just a mob of people, and it was one of our busiest days of the year. So the street closures, just anytime they're closed, it's good for us.
I'm going to go to you next. Since you're in real estate, I think a lot of people would love to hear what you're hearing when you're meeting with prospects and clients about Northville. What is the vibe? Do they want the streets open, closed? Like, what is the overall feeling that you're getting from the community?
Well, I'll keep this somewhat short, but in general, I would say that there isn't anyone that says, I would love, find me a downtown that I can drive through. It's not something that comes up.
So, a question for everybody, if anybody wants to take a stab at it. Everybody on the panel. If you were to paint a picture of the next 2 to 3 years, what would be the dream scenario? What would that look like? What would it feel like? What would that involve?
I think I've said it in the past a few times that I think even 5-10 years down the line, what type of town and city do we want to be? Do we want to be like a destination place for people that run the whole region? And what kind of place do we want to be? Do we want to be like every other town with traffic flowing through it? Or is it a dependable, and this is the consistency that we need to see the marketing, that it's just clear to everybody in the region, because they're not all following every little in and out. They just know that you guys, the general messed up in Northville. Is there any parking? And they're going to close. That consistency for 6 months in the summer, and everyone in the region knows that that's the case. In 2 or 3 or 5 years, that's just consistent. Everyone in the region knows that Northville, 6 months a year, it doesn't matter. It's a Tuesday afternoon, I can bring my kids and run around, or it's a Friday night. So I would love to see in 2 or 3 years and 5 years, this be the vibrant, walkable, exciting place that it's leading towards being. And I'm not sure, it's so unfortunate some small groups kind of dictating what wonderful vision this place could have with a Downs development, a lot of new potential clients for all of us. And it's just exciting to be in a downtown, and it doesn't matter any downtown. Parking's going to be an issue. It's people get around it. If they want, build it, and they will come. And yes, we can maybe plan a little bit better for parking, but let's keep that need coming, and people will figure it out. 2 or 3 years.
So my vision for Northville as a restaurateur is a little different. I'm hoping, I really enjoyed when we had the permanent structures. I know we're not going back there, but, you know, we've traveled overseas and we see, we tried to figure out what the names of them were earlier, but these structures where, you know, when the restaurant's open, they can lower the umbrella and people can sit underneath of them. And when the restaurants aren't open, you roll them back up. But it's still a pedestrian walkway, and it's very vibrant and great, and it's got a great community. That's kind of what I wish, and it goes on the whole planning thing. You know, businesses are willing to invest in the downtown, in our spaces, making things look better. But we need the certainty. We need to know that we're making a long-term investment, and we're not making a 2-week investment that might get taken away from us.
Yeah, I think for me, looking long-term, the first thing I'd like to see is for all of this, like Derek was saying, to be resolved. Let it be finished and let our local elected officials be the ones who are making the decisions. That's number one, because I trust that 5 years from now, whatever is going on, they'll be able to make the right decisions and adjust and pivot like we've talked about. But related to that, I really hope that all of the businesses that want to be in Northville, that stay open late, that are open on the weekends, I hope that all those businesses are still here, because that is the character of our town. In addition to the people here, our businesses, each and every one has a character, and it creates the vibe that we all love in this community. And so I hope that they're all still here. And then the other piece that I hope for is that we found a way through the pedestrian zone to create connections, not just in the downtown the way that it is, but with the new Downs development. There's a lot of concern and worry about how is it going to change with that many more houses and that many more people. Well, the way to make it a positive change is to continue, I'm going to say it again, but it's Gather Northville, continue to create connections, continue to create ways for people to get to know each other, for the kids to have events where they, you know, are doing things together outside of school, where the main square is an area where everyone comes to spend time together. And it's not the Downs versus downtown, it's all Northville together. And I really know, I believe that with the officials that we have elected and with the community that we have, that will happen. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it and getting to enjoy it.
And my perspective, just as somebody that's a local resident with a young family, I want to see more of what we have. I mean, you use the word vibe. It was a vibe. I mean, it was such a connected, joyful experience. And we walked downtown every single day. And we would see so many friends. And the kids get to have a little sense of autonomy and feel, you know, like they're still in a safe place. So as, you know, somebody with a young family, that's my hope, is that we can get through this where everybody is engaging as, you know, grown-ups and from a positive place, and that we come out the other side just stronger because of it. And I mean, I think Andrew said, you know, with 150 of my friends, this has brought people together in such a positive way. And I think that's what the community needed, is a voice that was positive and optimistic, rooted in reality. That's why we need funding for a lot of this and all those other things. But, you know, that we want to continue to fight for what we had after it was really, in my opinion, abruptly taken away. So one last question for everybody. We're a little short on time. If you could sit down with the full city council tomorrow, what's your one sentence ask? Hard hitting.
Please consider being brave enough to share videos of your candid thoughts online, so that those who don't come to city council or aren't aware of the meetings, that they know what's going on. You can turn comments off or keep them on, but it's the best way for people to know, to hear it directly from you.
My question was going to be about better attorney, but they've already answered that question and kind of what the next path forward is. And to be honest, after hearing John and Andrew talk, I have full confidence that they're going to do what's right and they're going to get us through this.
They did such a good job of explaining everything. I think practically get this done. The money that we donate is one thing, but my question would be, what are we doing since this potentially involves every municipality in Michigan. What are we doing to pull from their resources that maybe help us fight this battle? That might be a fair question or something to think about. Don't have to answer.
We're gonna wrap this up, but I want to say thank you to the panelists for all of your support and for being here tonight. And thank you to everybody for showing up. And I think there's going to be some really clear calls to action. We need everybody's voice. We need everybody's support. This is something that it's all volunteers. We all have day jobs and families and all the things, but we're here because we love Northville. And we're gonna look to the community for outreach and to really help continue to move this forward. And we appreciate your involvement in that. Thanks.
All right, well, my stage crew sets up for the next act. No, I'm kidding. You guys, there are so many people who made this night happen. Thank you to all of the partners, and not just tonight, but to the companies that passed out buttons or made shirts and swag and a website. And so many people came together to make the past 6 months amazing. So thank you all to everyone. So please support all of these businesses. We are really honored to be partners with them. And really lastly, if anyone wants to join us at table 5, they have open specially for anyone who wants to come and continue the conversation. So again, you can scan the QR code to donate directly to the PASS or donate directly to the city. And again, we've been continuing to say this, I grew up in Northville and I loved that experience, but I loved what my kids' experience could have been more. And that was a big reason for me putting that one sign in my lawn. And growing up in Northville, you learn about all of the historical families. And I know the Yerkes family would love to have family reunion on that street. All right? They would have a sign. They would have a sign. So you guys, let's all write this next chapter. And thank you guys all for your support. And have a good evening. Thank you.